Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We begin with the build-up around Iran. Is the US military pushing back against a war? Reports say top generals are wary, they're flagging risks. But President Trump has rubbished those claims. He says his military is aligned and all options are on the table. Tonight we'll break it down for you. Also making sense of the tariff math, which keeps getting messier. Is it 15%? Is it 10%? The numbers keep changing, the confusion does not. And that's not all. Legal challenges are also mounting. In the world of AI, Anthropic says Chinese firms are stealing data. It's a bit rich coming from a company that itself has been accused of using copyrighted material to train bots. In India, the government unveils the country's first anti-terror doctrine. We'll tell you what it says. Also in focus, Prime Minister Modi is set to visit Israel. What's on the agenda? How El Mencho was caught and why Mexico's cartels remain so powerful. Why France has barred the US envoy from meeting its ministers. How the US is grappling with a severe winter storm, and why car makers are pushing for eyes-off driving. All this and more lined up. The headlines first. Volodymyr Zelensky marks the 4-year anniversary of the Ukraine war. The Ukrainian president says Russia has failed to achieve its goals, while the Kremlin promises to continue fighting until its war aims are fulfilled. So far, talks between the two sides have failed to achieve any breakthrough. The Ukraine war is Europe's deadliest conflict since the Second World War. Thailand's army says it exchanged fire with Cambodian forces along their border, but Phnom Penh has rejected allegations that its military fired on Thai troops. Thailand has accused Cambodia of violating their December truce last month as well. In 2025, the decades-long border dispute had erupted into several rounds of clashes. Donald Trump is set to deliver his State of the Union address. This will be the first one of his second term in office. Trump will lay out his agenda amid mounting political pressure and falling approval ratings. His keynote speech comes ahead of midterm elections in November. Some Democrats have threatened to boycott Trump's address. China imposes export restrictions on dozens of Japanese firms as the spat between the two countries worsens. Beijing claims these companies are helping Tokyo enhance its military capabilities. Ties between the two countries have been fraught since November after the Japanese Prime Minister warned China against attacking self-ruled Taiwan. And Meta and AMD sign a multi-year major chips deal. The social media giant will buy 6 gigawatts worth of AMD's artificial intelligence chips. The deal is one of the biggest AI partnerships in tech history. This also challenges NVIDIA's iron grip on the AI market. It's decision time for Donald Trump. He's assembled a massive armada in West Asia. We are talking warplanes, carriers and air defenses. It's the largest US military build-up in years, and now he must take a call. Does he strike Iran or pull back? Apparently, the US military is advising caution. That includes the president's top general and military advisor, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane. He is being described as a reluctant warrior. Reports say General Kane feels that there is a high risk of entanglement, basically that America will get stuck in a long conflict. He also feels that there is a high risk of American casualties. It appears that the general has 3 concerns. Concern number 1, the US would be running low on munitions. They've used a lot of bombs and missiles to help Israel. They've also sold dozens of them to Ukraine. So the American stockpile has shrunk. That's concern number 1. Number 2, this will be a lone attack. Yes, Israel will join the operations, but none of the NATO allies will join America. And that's a key difference. In Iraq and Afghanistan, the US had allies to help with intelligence and supplies. This time, Washington will be all alone. That's the second concern. Which brings us to the third one, the final one, the scale of the operation. Trump is looking to destroy Iran's missiles and nuclear facilities. And these are spread across the country, across Iran, meaning you cannot destroy them in one go. Iran will have a window to retaliate. They can hit US soldiers, they can hit US bases and warships, and that is why General Dan Kane fears casualties. Now, if these reports are true, it's not a good look for Trump. Both he and his military look reluctant, which is why the president decided to address these reports, and that too in typical Trump fashion. Let me quote from his statement. This is what Trump has said. Numerous stories from the fake news media have been circulating stating that General Daniel Kane, sometimes referred to as Raisin, is against us going to war with Iran. This story is 100% incorrect. General Kane, like all of us, would like not to see war, but if a decision is made on going against Iran at a military level, it is his opinion that it will be something easily won. So you've got two versions. US media reports say General Kane is wary, but US President Trump says General Kane is fully confident that a victory will be quite easy. The question is, which version is true? The same General Kane also advised Trump on Venezuela. Back then, he was all in. He advised the president to go ahead and attack. But Iran is not Venezuela. Iran is a whole different ballgame. Their military is prepared, their regime is united, and they have twice as many people. So it makes sense for General Kane to advise caution when it comes to fighting Iran. And it's not just him, by the way. Reports say Trump's core team is split. Vice President J.D. Vance is wary of the fallout of striking Iran. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is on the fence, and Senator Lindsey Graham wants an attack. Meanwhile, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner prefer talks. They want President Trump to wait for the discussions with Iran on Thursday. The third round of discussions will happen on Thursday. If that round fails, then military options can be explored. So I guess a lot hinges on the talks in Geneva. Iran has made its position very clear. We will discuss the nuclear program and enrichment, but the missile stockpile is off the table. We will not discuss that. Which means the ball is now in Trump's court. Will he pull the trigger in the coming days? All his military pieces are in place. The last of them is the aircraft carrier USS Gerald Ford. It has docked in the Israeli port city of Haifa. The US will likely use the Ford carrier to defend Israel, basically shoot down Iran's missiles targeting Israel. Meanwhile, the other carrier will be used for the attacks. That's the USS Abraham Lincoln. It is sailing somewhere in the northern Arabian Sea. Now, the fact is, Trump cannot deploy these resources endlessly. Just consider the Ford carrier. It has been at sea for more than 240 days. 240 days, it's one of the longest deployments in modern history. Reports say the sailors are fatigued, they are losing morale, they are battling a clogged sewage system. So simply put, this deployment is not sustainable. The US has stationed more than 200 warplanes in West Asia. They have deployed more than 40,000 troops, plus 16 warships are at sea. All of them await a decision from Donald Trump. Even Iran is bracing for that. They're dealing with twin challenges right now. At home, there are new protests. Students in Tehran have hit the streets again. They're calling for toppling the Islamic regime. Meanwhile, the military is busy preparing. Iran's Revolutionary Guards held drills in the south today. That's where Tehran has deployed its missiles. So both sides are locked and loaded, and both sides will be looking at the talks on Thursday. If those talks fail, all bets are off. It is tariff day again. Donald Trump's new tariff rate came into effect last night, but it came with a twist. On Friday night, the US Supreme Court struck down his tariffs. Within hours, Trump fired back. He signed an executive order and he declared 10% tariffs on all countries, 10%. Those tariffs have come into effect now. But over the weekend, Trump announced another 15% tariff. Not the 10%, a 15% tariff. That order is yet to be finalized. There is little clarity around it. And that is causing a fair bit of nervousness. But for now, let's talk about the tariff that has kicked in, the 10% tariff. It comes with some exemptions. The first exemption is for Canada and Mexico. Both are neighbors of the United States and both have a trade agreement with the US. Goods covered under that pact won't be tariffed at 10%. Those goods are exempted. The second exemption is for food and farm products, like certain agricultural goods. They are exempted from this 10% tariff. The idea is to protect American consumers from higher food prices. So a 10% rate is in effect and a 15% rate is in process. Now, if you're a business owner exporting goods to the US, you have our sympathies. This confusion can be punishing. Do you plan your business according to the 10% tariff or do you brace for a 15% tariff? And this uncertainty will only increase in the coming days because legal challenges against the US government are mounting. Yesterday, FedEx sued the US government. FedEx is one of the world's leading shipping companies. They want a refund for all the tariffs they paid earlier. And the numbers are staggering. Do you know how much money was collected in tariffs? $175 billion. That's how much the US government has collected, $175 billion. Now, FedEx wants its share returned. And how much is that? We don't know how much the US government owes them. But in September last year, FedEx had released an estimate. They said they could lose $1 billion to tariffs. So the demand for refund could be around the same ballpark, $1 billion. And FedEx is not the only one making such demands. There are other companies too, like Costco, Toyota, and Goodyear. They've either filed lawsuits already or they're preparing a case. And if the US government loses these cases, it could end up with a repayment bill of historic proportions. $175 billion is not a rounding error. It is bigger than the GDP of many countries. So what is Donald Trump's plan for these lawsuits? Stall the process. That's the plan. Let these cases drag through the courts. That is what Trump has hinted at. He said these legal battles could stretch for up to 5 years. Of course, by the end of it, it will be someone else's problem because Trump has only 3 more years in office.
Are you saying that you don't plan to honor refunds for companies that file for them?
I just told you the answer, right? I told you the answer. It's not discussed. We'll end up being in court for the next 5 years.
Meanwhile, Trump is working on a counter strategy. Reports say the US government will launch fresh investigations, this time on national security grounds. And they will target specific products. They've already drawn up a list, apparently, a list that includes batteries, cast iron and iron fittings, electrical grid equipment, telecom hardware, plastics and plastic piping, and industrial chemicals. The US imports these goods in large quantities, and this is Trump's game plan. If direct tariffs face legal hurdles, Trump wants to classify these imports and label them as national security risks. And that would change everything. Because under the US law, the president has special powers. When something is a national security risk, the president can restrict their imports. He can impose heavy duties. And such cases are harder to challenge in court. So in simple terms, the Supreme Court may have taken one weapon away, but Trump is building a whole new arsenal. He is preparing for a longer battle. Now the latest on the AI war. It's China versus the US. The Americans are accusing the Chinese of cheating. And leading the charge is Anthropic. It says Chinese AI firms are training on America's chatbots. Now, Anthropic, as you know, is an American AI company. They have a chatbot called Claude. Anthropic says Claude may have been mined for intelligence. How? By being asked too many questions. Anthropic says Claude was asked questions more than 16 million times. By whom? China's top AI players, DeepSeek, Minimax, and Moonshot AI. Anthropic says these firms created more than 24,000 fake accounts. They ran 16 million exchanges with Claude and used a technique called distillation. They used it to boost their own AI systems. And what exactly is distillation? Well, imagine there's an exam and you haven't studied for it. So you sit next to the smartest kid in class, you ask them thousands of questions, you copy their answers, and you write your paper based on those answers. That is basically how distillation in this context works. In AI terms, it would mean something like this. A powerful AI model generates answers. A smaller or less capable model studies those answers, and over time, it learns to mimic the powerful model's behavior. But here's the twist. Distillation per se is not illegal. In fact, it's quite common. Companies use it internally all the time. They use it to make cheaper, faster versions of their own models. The problem arises when someone else does it. When you use some other company's model to train your own AI, that is problematic, and that is what Anthropic says Chinese companies are doing. They're using distillation to learn from Claude. Anthropic says DeepSeek ran around 150,000 exchanges. These were aimed at improving logic and alignment and learning how to handle sensitive topics. Moonshot AI ran around 3.4 million exchanges. These were about advanced reasoning. But the worst culprit apparently was Minimax. It ran the largest operation with 13 million exchanges. 13 million. They were heavily focused on coding. And this is a big accusation because Claude is not even available in China. So how are Chinese companies using it? Anthropic says they're doing it through proxy servers. Also, this is not the first complaint of its kind. OpenAI said the same thing last year. It said DeepSeek and others were using distillation to mimic ChatGPT. And this is not just about copying. The American firms say that there's a bigger issue here. Safety guardrails. US AI companies build safety guardrails into their systems. That's what they say. They build these guardrails to prevent misuse, to prevent things like cyber attacks or malicious automation. But if a competitor distills its systems, those guardrails are missing. So you have powerful systems, but they are stripped of safety layers. Again, this is the accusation made by Anthropic. It is only one side of the story. The Chinese companies have not responded, neither has Beijing. Now, we won't put it past China or its companies to copy others. It's their whole business model after all. Copy and make it cheaper. That's what China does. But I must add here that US companies should be the last ones to talk about ethics. They use vast troves of data to train their models. They use data that they have no rights over. And look at Anthropic in particular. They've been using copyrighted content illegally. Last year, they settled a lawsuit for this, a $1.5 billion lawsuit for wrongly using copyrighted content. So this lecture on copying is a bit rich coming from them. Elon Musk chimed into this debate. He accused Anthropic of stealing data regularly. So long story short, Anthropic is no saint. But where does that leave China? Are they really stealing AI? Now, the thing is, distillation is a common practice, like I said. It may violate terms of service, but does it legally qualify as theft? That is not clear. I guess it depends on how courts and regulators interpret it. And frankly, this debate is not about distillation, it's about the control of AI. Who controls the most powerful technology of our times? The US has been leading this race, but China is fast catching up. And Washington wants to prevent that. So they block chips, they control exports, and they accuse the other side of cheating. These are the first skirmishes of an AI Cold War, because in this race, whoever trains faster, whoever scales faster and controls the guardrails will write the rules for the future. Let's turn to India now. New Delhi has unveiled its first ever counter-terrorism policy. It's an 8-page document that spells out India's approach. It's called Prahar, meaning strike. But beyond the meaning, it's also an acronym. Prahar offers a 7-layer approach, and each layer is represented by one letter. P for prevention, R for response, and so on. Tonight, we'll take a closer look at this policy. What does it say, and why does India need it? Now, this document has been prepared by India's Home Ministry. Right at the outset, it makes two things clear. One, India has a zero tolerance approach to terrorism. And two, India does not link terror to any religion, nationality or ethnicity. And just to be clear, this is not a free pass to Pakistan. The document does accuse neighbors of using terrorism as state policy. The difference is that India is not linking it to religion or nationhood. Basically, India is creating a distinction between the Pakistani state and its people. Now let's look at the 7 layers. Prevention. It is mostly about intelligence gathering. It talks about cooperation between different agencies. Once an input comes in, it must be passed on seamlessly. Only then can attacks be prevented. Equally important are cyber operations. Most terror groups use internet services to communicate and plan, so disrupting them must be a top priority. That is the first layer, prevention. The second layer is response. The document names local police as the first responders. It also reaffirms the role of the NSG as the premier counter-terror force. The NSG stands for National Security Guard. Their commandos specialize in complicated operations like hijacking or hostage rescue. The third layer is aggregating capacities. This mainly talks about preparedness, giving the latest technology and resources to law enforcement, creating more synergy between agencies, drafting common protocols across states, basically ensuring a seamless and lethal response. Now to the fourth layer, human rights and the rule of law. This talks about ensuring due process in the fight against terrorism. We saw that even after the 26/11 Mumbai attack. India gave a fair trial to the captured Pakistani terrorist, Ajmal Kasab. That is the legacy that New Delhi wants to uphold. Which brings us to the fifth layer, attenuating the conditions conducive to terrorism. This is basically a fight against radicalization. The policy calls for roping in NGOs, religious leaders and preachers. The idea is to identify and help targeted youth. It also calls for socio-economic measures, things like education, housing, jobs. The idea is to eliminate the root causes of radicalization. Which brings us to the sixth layer, aligning and shaping global efforts. This could mean sharing intelligence across borders, or executing extradition treaties, or UN campaigns to designate foreign terrorists. After all, you cannot fight terrorism alone. You need foreign support. You need global support. And now the final layer, recovery and resilience. Terror attacks leave a huge imprint on our society. They also mean lifelong trauma for survivors. So the idea is to use proper resources to help these people, whether that's doctors or NGOs or psychologists. These are the 7 layers of India's new anti-terror policy. Now to the second question, why does India need it? Why do we need this policy? Well, there are 3 important reasons. One, it's a statement of intent. India has been one of the biggest victims of terrorism. We've lost hundreds of lives to this evil. So it was important for New Delhi to draft this document. Successive governments have talked about zero tolerance, but this policy institutionalizes it. Secondly, it offers clarity to the stakeholders. What role does local police play? What role does the NSG play? How can NGOs and community leaders help? What should state governments do? Think of it as a guidebook for all these stakeholders. They can prepare policies based on these 7 layers. And finally, the third reason. It acknowledges a whole of society approach. Most of the times, that is missing from public conversations. We hear about not giving an inch. We hear about making perpetrators pay. We hear about revenge and war. But this document goes beyond that. It also focuses on how society can prevent such attacks. How can we eliminate the root causes? And how can we help the survivors? And that's why this policy is so important. It takes a long-term, nuanced and expansive approach to terrorism. You could say it's a prahar on the roots, not just the branches. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be in Israel tomorrow. It's a visit that the world will be watching. This will be his first visit since the war in Gaza ended, and it comes amid the threat of a new war, a much bigger war. This time, the US and Iran are locked in a tense standoff. We've just told you about it. President Trump is threatening an attack. He has made massive military deployments in West Asia. In the middle of all of this, the Indian Prime Minister will land in Israel. India's Ministry of External Affairs has issued a statement. It said both leaders, Prime Ministers Modi and Netanyahu, will review the regional situation. And they will, of course, review the bilateral relationship, the India-Israel relationship. Reports say new defense deals could also be on the table and a proposal for a new regional alliance, which, by the way, is already stirring up a debate. Our next report has more.
In 2017, Narendra Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel.
Welcome, my friend.
Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed him with a public embrace. The red carpet was rolled out, and that barefoot walk on the beach became the defining image of a new partnership. More than 8 years later, PM Modi is set to make another trip there. But the mood this time is different. This is his first visit since the war in Gaza ended, and the region has witnessed some major events. There are 3 reasons why this visit matters. The first is defense. The second is the regional situation in West Asia. And the third is a proposed new alliance. On the defense front, India has been Israel's biggest weapons buyer over the last decade. Between 2015 and 2019, India purchased drones, missile systems, sensors, surveillance technology, and border control equipment. That relationship has only deepened since. And now, new deals could be in the works. Reports suggest the visit could include a memorandum of understanding covering deals worth $10 billion. This is likely to be implemented over several years. The second reason this visit matters is the state of West Asia itself. The region is on the edge. President Trump has threatened to attack Iran. There is a substantial American military buildup across the region. The specter of a wider conflict is real. PM Modi's visit also comes as Israel moves to extend its control over parts of the West Bank, territory currently under the Palestinian Authority. That move has drawn sharp international condemnation. India's position here is clear and consistent. New Delhi strongly condemned the October 7th Hamas attack that triggered the war in Gaza. But India has also maintained its support for a 2-state solution for Palestine. And now, the third element, and perhaps the most consequential, a new regional alliance. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has outlined what he is calling a hexagon of alliances. Speaking on Sunday, Netanyahu described a proposed grouping that would include Israel, India, Greece, and Cyprus, along with other unnamed Arab, African, and Asian states.
In the vision that I see before my eyes, we will create a complete system, essentially a kind of hexagon of alliances around or within the Middle East. This includes India. This includes Arab countries. This also includes African countries, also countries in the Mediterranean, Greece, and Cyprus, and also countries in Asia that I will not list right now. I will present it in an orderly manner.
It is an ambitious framework, but there is a significant caveat. No government has publicly endorsed the plan. Not India, not Greece, not Cyprus. Netanyahu has named them, but none of them have confirmed. Alongside the alliance question, PM Modi and Netanyahu are also expected to discuss the India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor. This is a large infrastructure and trade route project, one that connects India to Europe via West Asia. Israel is a key part of this corridor. Both countries have a stake in pushing it forward. So what does this visit tell us about India's foreign policy? India does not take sides easily. It buys weapons from Israel. It also supports Palestinian statehood. It engages with the United States. It also maintains ties with Iran. That balancing act is deliberate, and this visit could become yet another expression of it.
It was a small cabin near the mountains of western Mexico. In this cabin, a phone kept lighting up. Guess who was on the other end? The most wanted man in Mexico, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho. He was the boss of a drug cartel called the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. For years, El Mencho had been a ghost. Satellites could not pin him down, informants could not reach him. Entire military units tried and failed to capture him. It's as if he was invincible. Until this week. Because this week, he's dead. So how did Mexico reach him? Through his girlfriend. Mexican intelligence tracked her movements. They watched for patterns, they followed signals, and her visit to meet El Mencho led them straight to a secluded safe house in the woods. So special forces moved in at dawn. After she left, they surrounded the cabin quietly, and then all hell broke loose. Bodyguards opened fire. The gunfight was so intense that a military helicopter was forced into an emergency landing. El Mencho ran. He fled into the forest. He was wounded and captured alive, but he did not survive the transfer. He died while being airlifted to Mexico City. 7 of his men were killed, 2 soldiers were wounded, and heavy weapons were seized. But the real explosion came much later. Within hours of the news breaking, Western Mexico descended into chaos. Cartel gunmen blocked nearly 100 highways. Vehicles were hijacked and set on fire. Roads became walls of smoke. In Guadalajara, streets became empty. This is a city that is set to host the FIFA World Cup. Flights were suspended here and public transport was shut down. It was all part of a plan. The backup plan of his cartel. If the boss falls, shut everything down. By the time the dust settled, 25 National Guard members were dead, 34 armed members of the cartel were also killed, dozens were wounded, and more than 70 people were arrested. The message was clear. El Mencho may be gone, but his cartel still had teeth.
First, I would like to offer my condolences to the families of our colleagues who lost their lives. We are also going and recognition to our military personnel who carried out a successful operation. It can be viewed from many perspectives, but it is clear that they accomplished their mission. What was demonstrated? The strength of the Mexican state. There is no doubt about that. Thank you.
Now, El Mencho was not always a drug lord. He started off as a local police officer. In the 1990s, he was convicted in the US for drug trafficking. He served 3 years in prison. When he returned, he jumped back into the drug trade. In 2009, he co-founded the CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Within 15 years, it became one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. They moved into meth production, fentanyl trafficking, fuel theft, kidnapping, extortion, online scams. CJNG has a footprint in all 50 US states. It operates across most of Mexico, and it's not the only drug cartel in Mexico. It's one of many. Which brings us to the question, how did cartels become so big in Mexico? To understand this, we have to rewind to the 1980s. Back then, only one cartel dominated, the Guadalajara. In 1989, its leader was arrested, the empire split, and its fragments became different groups, like the Sinaloa, Gulf, Tijuana, and Juarez. Then in 2006, Mexico declared war on drugs, but instead of wiping cartels out, the crackdown splintered them further. Each arrest created a vacuum, each vacuum led to a war, and each war meant more violence. Since 2006, more than 400,000 people have been killed in this drug war. 125,000 have gone missing. El Mencho's group, the CJNG, rose from this chaos. And unlike older cartels that focused on smuggling, this group also wanted territory. Now, territory requires soldiers, so the group militarized. They got armored trucks, explosive drones, and heavy caliber rifles. This was organized crime evolving into something bigger, something closer to a private army. And now the government has decapitated it. Today, Mexico woke up to security forces on the streets. There's an uneasy calm in the air.
Today there is more calm, and there is government, there are armed forces, there is a security cabinet, and there is a lot of coordination. So you can rest assured that peace, security, and normality in the country are being safeguarded.
El Mencho may be dead, but Mexico's cartels are not built around one man. They're networks. So this death leaves a power vacuum. If one successor consolidates power quickly, the group will survive. If not, it will most likely fracture into multiple armed factions. And history shows us what comes next. More turf wars, more public violence, more instability. Because when a king falls in Mexico's underworld, the throne does not stay empty. It becomes the most coveted and the most dangerous seat in the country. Our next story is about a diplomatic standoff between France and the United States. Paris has blocked the US ambassador from meeting its government, meeting the French government. And why is that? Because he missed a meeting. The US ambassador to France is a man called Charles Kushner. He's the father of Jared Kushner, who is the son-in-law of President Donald Trump. Now, France had summoned the senior Kushner, the ambassador, for an explanation over comments from the US Embassy. But Kushner did not show up. Paris saw this as disrespect, and so they barred Kushner from meeting French ministers. Our next report has more.
A diplomatic door has just been slammed shut in Paris, and the man who could reopen it keeps not showing up. France has barred the United States ambassador from meeting its ministers. He is not expelled, but shut out. The reason is not a treaty dispute, it is a missed meeting, and the words that came before that meeting. The row began after the death of a 23-year-old far-right activist following clashes between rival political groups in the French city of Lyon. The killing shocked France. It also drew attention in Washington. The U.S. State Department's Counterterrorism Bureau warned that violent radical leftism is on the rise. The American Embassy in Paris reposted that message. For Paris, that was a line crossed. France summoned Ambassador Charles Kushner. It wanted answers. But Kushner did not show up. He sent a senior official instead. That made things worse.
We do not accept that foreign countries can come and interfere or invite themselves into the national political debate, regardless of the circumstances. This is the explanation we must have.
The French foreign minister was not mincing words. He said failing to appear ignored the most basic customs of diplomacy.
There is nothing more usual than summoning an ambassador when explanations need to be made. Once these explanations have taken place, the United States ambassador to France will naturally regain access to members of the French government.
So the message from Paris is simple. Come in, sit down, and explain yourself. Until then, the door stays closed. Kushner, meanwhile, can still carry out his routine duties, but his ability to operate at the highest level has been curtailed. So who is Charles Kushner? He is not a career diplomat, but a real estate developer and a billionaire investor. In fact, he is the father of Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Donald Trump. That connection got him the job, but it has not helped him do it, because this is not the first time he has skipped a summon. Last year, France called him in over remarks criticizing its response to anti-Semitism. Kushner didn't show up then either. Paris took note and remembered it. This latest confrontation lands on an already fragile ground. Relations between President Trump and President Emmanuel Macron have already been strained over trade tariffs, Ukraine, and Europe's security role. The two leaders have kept talking, but the warmth is missing. French officials insist the broader alliance remains intact.
It does not affect the relationship between France and the United States in any way, which we are celebrating this year, the 250th anniversary.
And yet, barring an ambassador from ministerial access is rare among close allies. It is not a declaration of war, but it is a warning shot. Diplomacy runs on access and trust. Right now, both are in question. If Kushner complies and offers explanations, the impasse may ease. If he does not, the chill could deepen.
In India, corruption has always been a major public issue. It has triggered massive protests, it has birthed new political parties, it has even brought down governments, but most of that is aimed at lawmakers and ministers, or maybe local government officials. What gets ignored is judicial corruption, though perhaps not for long, because India's school textbooks have got an update. The new Class 8 Social Sciences book talks about judicial challenges, two of them, corruption and backlogs. The textbook has been updated by the NCERT, the National Council of Educational Research and Training. It's an autonomous body under the Education Ministry of India. And here's what the textbook says. On account of multiple reasons, such as lack of an adequate number of judges, complicated legal procedures and poor infrastructure, the judicial system in our country has a massive backlog. When cases are not resolved within a reasonable time, those who approach the court often feel that justice has been denied. The book also mentions the data. The Supreme Court of India has 81,000 pending cases. The high courts have 6.2 million pending cases. The lower courts, wait for it, the lower courts have 47 million cases. Naturally, this backlog leads to a delay in verdicts. Half of the High Court backlog has been pending for more than 3 years. As the textbook says, justice delayed is justice denied. And then there's corruption. Again, let me quote from the textbook. People do experience corruption at various levels of the judiciary. For the poor and the disadvantaged, this can worsen the issue of access to justice. Hence, efforts are constantly being made at the state and union levels to build faith and increase transparency in the judicial system. Now, let's take a closer look at this problem. If judges are corrupt, what happens to them? Well, the Indian judiciary has an in-house redressal system. If there is a complaint, it is forwarded to higher authority, either the Chief Justice of India or the Chief Justice of the High Courts. From 2017 to 2021, more than 1,600 such complaints were filed. But it's not clear how these complaints were dealt with. What happened to them? In some cases, the Parliament can step in. They can impeach judges if misconduct is proven. Though since independence, not a single judge has been impeached in India, not one. Now, this whole episode raises two questions. One, why haven't these issues been resolved? And two, why include it in textbooks? There are many reasons for the rising backlog. For example, too many vacancies. Indian high courts have more than 1,200 sanctioned posts. Out of these 1,200, 309 are lying vacant. District courts in India have a sanctioned strength of close to 26,000. And out of this, more than 4,800 are vacant. So naturally, the backlog will keep rising. Having said that, this is just one part of the problem. Equally important is infrastructure. For example, we need more courtrooms in India. We need digital records. We need internet connectivity. These will ensure speedy disposal of cases. Why isn't that happening? Well, the infrastructure push is happening as we speak. The government is digitizing district courts across the country. Nearly 7,200 crores has been allocated for this purpose. If you look at court halls, the numbers are rising. We had less than 16,000 in 2014. Today, we have more than 22,000. So infrastructure is improving, albeit slowly. But the issue of vacancies remains unresolved. And why is that? Well, in India, judges are picked by the Collegium. The Collegium is a group of sitting Supreme Court judges. They pick judges for other courts in India. Basically, judges appoint other judges. In many cases, the Collegium has been slow to pick appointees. And in some cases, the government has been sitting on recommendations. Some picks from 2019 are yet to be cleared. So clearly, there are institutional and political roadblocks. Which brings us to the second question. Why have we included all of this in textbooks? Well, the next generation should know about these challenges. Children always hear about corrupt politicians. So when they grow up, they make corruption a key voting concern. They learn to demand transparency and accountability, hopefully. The same should apply to the judiciary as well. If there is corruption or nepotism, citizens should know. If there is a rising backlog, citizens should know. Right now, judicial challenges are limited to TV debates and living room conversations. It should go beyond that. There must be a public push for speedy justice, which is why students should learn about it. If they know what the problem is, they can fight for it. Our next story is about the future of driving. Car makers across the world are developing a new technology. It is called the eyes of driving tech. What is eyes of driving? It means the car can drive itself and you can look away from the road, check your phone, or do something else. It sounds convenient, right? But of course, there's a problem. When the car needs you back, you must take control immediately. And that can be dangerous because when a driver has mentally switched off, they may not be ready to take back control in an instant. And that could lead to accidents. And yet companies like Ford and General Motors are pushing ahead with this. They're developing this tech. But some others are pulling back. They say the costs are way too high, the safety risks are not clear. So is this technology the future or is it a dangerous gamble? Here's our report.
The car is moving. The steering wheel is turning. But the driver is looking down at a phone. Not illegally or recklessly, but because the car told them they could. This is the next frontier car makers are chasing. They call it eyes-off driving. It means the car can handle the road on its own, at least for a while, usually on a highway or under specific conditions. The question is, what happens when it needs you back? To understand the leap, you need to understand the ladder. At the bottom is level 0, no assistance. The human does everything. A step up from that, some cars have cruise control. Others can stay in a lane. Those are level 1 systems. Many newer cars combine steering and speed control. That is level 2. The car helps, but the driver is still responsible. Hands ready, eyes forward, and mind on the road. That is where many of the world's cars sit today. Level 3 changes the rules. The car drives itself in limited situations, and the driver can look away, but must return when the car asks. That moment, the hand back, is where everything gets complicated. It sounds convenient, but it also carries a risk built into its own design. The car makers pushing hardest into this space know this and are pressing ahead anyway. Ford plans to introduce a Level 3 system on electric vehicles from 2028. General Motors and Honda are exploring similar technology. Mercedes-Benz has already offered a limited version in the United States, but cracks are showing. Developing Level 3 is expensive. Costs can reach $1.5 billion. That is far more than current systems. Some companies are starting to wonder if the math works. Stellantis has pulled back from its plans. Mercedes has paused parts of its rollout. Others are reportedly doubling down on cheaper systems that still need human oversight. And underneath all of it is a safety question nobody has answered. When the car is driving, the human switches off. That is the whole point. But when something goes wrong, the car needs that human back, and fast. A driver who has mentally switched off may not be ready to switch back in time. That handback can be slow, clumsy, and in the wrong moment, it can even turn fatal. Then there is the question of blame. If a crash happens, who is responsible? The driver who looked away? Or the car that told them it was safe to? Nobody has a clear answer. Some autonomous vehicle companies think the whole Level 3 concept is a mistake. Firms focused on fully driverless technology, such as Waymo, prefer skipping this stage entirely. They are building systems that remove the driver from the loop. No handover and no confusion. For traditional car makers, though, eyes-off driving promises new revenue. It could save drivers time and could justify their years of investment in automation. But it sits in an awkward middle ground. Not fully manual, not fully autonomous. Car makers say the technology is ready. But whether the handover between human and machine can be made safe is still a looming question.
The US is grappling with a major storm, and this one was not triggered by Donald Trump. This is a severe winter storm, and it has hit the northeastern part of the country. It is called Hernando. And it has brought daily life to a near standstill. Cities like New York, Boston, and Philadelphia are all facing blizzard-like conditions. Roads are shut, flights are grounded, and millions of people are being told to stay indoors. Take a look. Now, this is not just any part of the United States. Like I said, this is the Northeast. It is home to the world's biggest financial centers, the busiest airports on the planet, and the United Nations itself. Right now, all of it is under snow. The storm began over the weekend and it quickly intensified on Monday morning. Met officials say it is one of the strongest storms in years. In some cities, more than 30 inches of snow fell within hours. New York City was among the worst hit.
It's pretty strange because this is where you come for Manhattan Henge, and you can see all the way through to New Jersey where the sun sets. And now here, like today, because of the snow, you can't see past Grand Central. And it's all gray and dark, which is also very nice and peculiar, but kind of scary too.
At the Times Square in New York, snowfall muted the city's roads. Times Square is one of the busiest road intersections in the world. Only a handful of people could be seen moving through its snow-filled streets.
I like snow, yeah, but this time is more liquid, so it's very hard to walk. So I don't like this sluggy, muddy type snow. Yeah. I like the dry, cotton type. So, but it's okay. That's why I came out from my home.
Strong cold winds have also battered the region. This has brought visibility down and made travel more dangerous. The result is more chaos at airports. Yesterday, more than 5,600 flights were cancelled. Today, another 2,000 scheduled flights have been grounded. Thousands of passengers are stranded at airport terminals.
So I decided that I might be able to catch a flight if I came a little south to Philadelphia. So my first flight was out of Newark yesterday night, canceled. Rebooked for this morning in Philadelphia, canceled. Rebooked for the middle of the day around 1 today in Philadelphia, canceled. Now my flight right now is scheduled for 5 in the afternoon. It's the first flight on the board that is not canceled.
Train services have also been suspended in several states. Buses have been cancelled. Highways remain closed. Tens of thousands of homes have been left without electricity. So what caused such a powerful storm? Experts call it a nor'easter. It's a storm that usually forms along the US East Coast. It happens when cold air from the Arctic collides with warm and moist air from the Atlantic Ocean. When those two air systems meet, the storm tends to intensify rapidly. Now, this particular one developed into what is known as a bomb cyclone. That simply means the air pressure fell very quickly. A fast drop in pressure makes the storm stronger. Winds pick up and snowfall becomes heavier. The result was heavy and wet snow.
It's probably about the worst I've seen. I mean, I was here at the last big storm. I think that was around 2016 or something, but it wasn't as bad as this.
The authorities have declared a state of emergency in New York, for instance. Non-essential vehicles have been ordered to stay off roads. People have been urged to stay at home, and National Guard and snow plows have been deployed. Warming centers have been opened for the homeless.
I know that this is a city full of people who do not like to sit still. And yet, as the snow continues to fall and conditions remain dangerous, I am asking you to do just that.
So while the region sits still, perhaps President Trump should do too, long enough to reconsider his views on climate change. He calls it a hoax. Scientists say storms like this one are becoming more intense because of climate change. Maybe it's time to reconsider the presidential position on it. As for the storm, it may not be over yet. Forecasters are tracking another weather system. They say it could bring fresh snow later this week. Now, winter storms are common in this part of the country, but this one has stood out because of its scale and disruption. For now, emergency crews are clearing the roads, power is being restored, and the region is slowly getting back on its feet. We've already told you about Punch on the show, the viral baby monkey that has the internet's attention, so much so that people want to adopt it. They want to go to war for it, and many are even planning trips to Japan just to see Punch at the Ichikawa City Zoo. And those who can't see him physically, well, they have turned Punch into an emotional support reaction GIF. From fan edits and sad music montages and Save Punch fan pages. Take a look at this. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. European leaders honor fallen Ukrainian soldiers as the war enters its fifth year. Clashes break out between rival student groups at the Tehran University amid protests, and hundreds in Gaza break their Ramazan fast amid ruins. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1942, the Voice of America made its first broadcast in German. The VOA was established by the US government to counteract Nazi propaganda. The broadcast marked a significant moment in the Second World War. We are leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
The memory of the fallen defenders of the European Council, Antonio Costa, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, Prime Minister of the Republic of Croatia, Andrej, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen,
Power doesn't end quietly. Some deaths are not accidents. They are messages. A gunshot. A crowd. A country frozen. The killer disappears. The questions don't. This is not just about who died. It's about what followed. Governments fell. Armies moved. History rewrote itself. 5 leaders, 5 moments, 1 pattern, the assassination.